What's up, buddies? So this is the second video in my series recapping the story of the Resident Evil games, and this time it's 2 and 3, the Raccoon City Incident. Now I am going to be playing the remakes of these games, which kind of complicates things. The thing about the RE2 remake is that it has two different characters and two campaigns you can play through. In the original game, these were two entirely separate stories that only interlinked at certain points. In this game, that's not the case, and it's much more like the RE1 remake where neither character's campaign is completely canon, because they do the same puzzles and fight the same bosses and shit. The RE3 remake only has one campaign, but that one story cut out so much shit from the original and changed a lot of what you do in that game. However, I think it keeps the important bits, so we're just gonna go with it. So if you want to know what happened previously in the series, you should really go watch my RE0 and 1 story recap video. But if you don't have the time for that, let me briefly fill you in. So an evil company called Umbrella was developing biological weapons called BOWs, using a virus called the T-virus, or Tyrant virus. The virus originated from a different one called Progenitor. The top researcher on this project was Dr. Marcus. Normally, the T-virus just turns people into zombies. However, if the right person is chosen and their transformation is guided with surgeries and implants, this virus can create these massive mutants called tyrants. Anyway, Dr. Marcus was eventually killed by two of his students, William Birkin and Albert Wesker, so that they could continue his research. At this point, Marcus had gone a little crazy. Birkin would then go on to research another virus, while Wesker focused on refining the Tyrant projects while also serving as the commander of the Raccoon City Police Department's Special Forces, the STARS. Well, in the year of our Lord 1998, it turned out that Marcus was able to be revived by one of his virus-infected leeches. He then leaked the T-virus at various Umbrella facilities in the Arklay mountain range, including the Spencer Mansion. STARS were sent in to investigate, where the vast majority would die. Wesker sent STARS out here to both clean up Umbrella's mess while also serving as a field test for his new BOWs. To make a long story short, Marcus was killed for good, Wesker was injured and disappeared, a couple tyrants were killed, and all Umbrella facilities in the region were detonated in a giant explosion, killing most of the monsters within them. This was all due to the efforts of a few good STARS agents and one random guy named Billy. The two most important of those STARS agents being Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. So like I said before, neither RE2 campaign is entirely canon, but what I'm going to do is go with Claire first and Leon second, which means that Claire is ahead of Leon throughout the story. Now, I'll still mention what's different about Leon A, mostly just the beginning, and that's because RE4 kind of says that it's canon. But I don't think that makes sense in RE2 itself, so whatever. Now when it comes to bosses, I'm just going to go with whichever character makes more sense to have fought that boss. Now technically RE3 begins before 2, but it's just a couple hours, so we're just going to go straight into 2. Alright, finally we can get into the actual game. So it begins with a scene of a trucker eating maybe the most disgusting burger I've ever seen. Like, that's the nasty patty, bro, you cannot be eating that. But the date is September 30th, and he's listening to a radio show about someone seeing a zombie outside a bar. And as he goes to adjust his radio, he smears this lady across the concrete. The trucker gets out and starts to panic, only for the lady to come back up behind him, a zombie. So I feel I should mention how that Raccoon City has been dealing with what they call the cannibal disease, and I'm sure you can guess what that is, but basically people have been attacking and eating each other in the streets. Anyway, after that we cut to Claire Redfield, sister of Chris Redfield, riding towards a gas station on her motorcycle. She's headed to Raccoon City looking for her brother, and on the way she stops at this eerily quiet gas station. The only person she finds inside is this guy, who's not doing too good. He points towards the back of the building, so Claire heads to investigate. Inside, she interrupts a cop who's trying to detain one of these so-called cannibals, and as it turns out, they're zombies! The T-virus has clearly hit this gas station hard, as the zombie takes a strip of meat out of the cop and heads to do the same to Claire. Now, zombies are tough as shit in this game. This is no Walking Dead where one shot to the head will kill them. But Claire eventually downs the zombie and tries to escape the gas station, only to find it filled with many more undead. Just as she reaches the door, this handsome motherfucker busts it open and kills the zombie that was about to get Claire. The two exit outside only to find a horde of the creatures descending onto the gas station. They barely manage to escape using the dead cop's car and finally get to introduce themselves. This here is Leon Kennedy, the second main character of the game and a cop who just got hired at the Raccoon City Police Department. His first day was supposed to be a while ago, but he was told to stay away. The cops had their hands full with this whole cannibal thing and couldn't devote the time to training a rookie. As the two arrive in Raccoon City, they find it deserted. Over the radio, they hear that the police station is serving as a refuge for citizens. Now here's a weird thing about Raccoon City. In both games, characters mention how there's a population of around 100,000 in the city. And I feel like that's really small for how the city looks. It looks like this bustling metropolis, but it only has 100,000 citizens. I feel like most cities with that many people are usually right next to other larger cities, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. I don't know, it just feels weird to me. Anyway, they come to a stop at a barricade in the road and quickly get surrounded by another horde of zombies. The car is stuck in place, and racing towards them is an oil tanker truck. It's the trucker from the beginning, and he seems to have been bitten by that zombie he ran over. The truck knocks the cop car through the barricade before blowing up, leaving Leon and Claire separated by a fiery wreck. Claire has a clear path to the police station, while Leon has to go the long way. Now, of course, as you play Leon 1, it's the opposite. Anyway, we're now going to follow Claire for a bit, as she has some shit to do before she can catch up with Leon. So Claire runs past a couple zombies before shutting herself into the police station. This supposed shelter for survivors seems to be deserted as well. The only human cop left is this guy, who's currently getting attacked by a zombie, so Claire rushes off to save him. At the end of this dank-ass hallway, we can find the cop behind the gate. Claire tries to save him, but he ends up in 2 pieces. Luckily, though, he had found a secret way out of the station in his notebook. You have to collect 3 medallions from these statues and then put them into another statue. Super weird for police station, but this place actually used to be a museum, so it makes a certain level of sense. Claire barely makes it back to the main room with the help of this injured cop, Marvin Brano. He actually tells Claire what happened to her brother. He's on vacation in Europe. Claire is pretty taken aback at this news, as you'd think Chris would have said he was going on vacation, but she's glad to hear it anyway. Marvin tells us to find this secret way out and gives us a knife. He's actually really nice to Claire here. Alright, time to peek into what would have happened if Leon had arrived first, because technically RE4 said that Marvin gave Leon the knife instead. So Leon does the whole shit with the cop and gets saved by Marvin. Marvin gives him his uniform, this SWAT type one, and tells him to use the secret entrance. Like Claire, Leon wants to get Marvin to a hospital, but he basically tells him to quit being a little bitch and follow his orders.
I'm giving you an order, rookie! You save yourself first!
Of course, Marvin is just using whatever language would get through to him, but he is much nicer to Claire. Anyway, let's go back to Claire trying to escape the station. So not far into the station, we can find this hallway filled with disfigured corpses. Shit like heads cleaved in half, something that no zombie could have done. We'll come back to that later. The first of these medallion statues can be found right in the main hall. Using the dead cop's journal, we can input the right password and unlock 1/3 of the secret passage. When we come back into the main hall, Marvin calls us over to check out the cameras, and none other than Leon is banging on a gate outside the police station. I mean, find your own shelter, bro, damn. Anyway, Claire goes over to investigate, and when she does, a helicopter crashes into the wall. When she meets with Leon, he seems more concerned with that than he does with the horde of zombies waking up behind him. The gate separating them is locked, so Claire and Leon need to go their separate ways once again. When Claire returns to the main room, Marvin has passed out from his injuries. In the upper levels of the station, we can find out what brutalized those people earlier in the hallway. It's this fucking monstrosity, a skinless monster with an exposed brain and long tongue. As such, they're called lickers. Given that they have no eyes, lickers are blind. You can sneak past them by walking slowly, but if you get caught, get ready to get mauled. Now you would think that shooting them in the brain would do a lot of damage, but that is not the case. These are the result of another strain of the T-virus, this one causing zombies who consume enough biomass to mutate into these things. These would definitely be very effective bioweapons if they could be controlled, which they clearly can't. Anyway, once all 3 medallions are found, Claire wakes up Marvin, but he's too far gone. And once again, he tells us to go on ahead ourselves. The secret passage takes us to this industrial-type area underneath the station. Claire finds a little girl down there. She's terrified of something. That something happens to be lurking right behind us. It's this half-man, half-flesh monster thing that knocks Claire down into a battle arena. The thing has both a human head and a giant eye on its shoulder. Shooting the eye is the much better move. Either way, it's tough as shit, and after chasing Claire around for a while, she damages it enough that it seems like the human side comes back long enough to throw herself off a ledge. When the thing is gone, Claire convinces the little girl to lower a ladder for her under the condition that Claire helps her look for her mom. The little girl, Sherry, tells us all about how her mom works for Umbrella and how she's always at work. Her dad worked with her mom, but Claire hints that he's dead. Claire and Sherry emerge into the parking garage of the police station when suddenly this old fuck emerges, pointing a gun at Claire. This is the police chief, Brian Irons, and he's a weirdo. For now, he makes Sherry tie up Claire under the threat of killing Miss Redfield. Once Claire is down, the chief grabs Sherry and takes her away from the station, locking the door behind him. Claire needs to find a keycard to get out of here, but before she does that, let's see what Leon was up to this whole time. So back when the two were separated after the truck crashed, Leon found his way into a nearby cemetery in an alley outside the police station. The alley leads right to that locked gate where he met Claire earlier. In a little closet outside the station, Leon finds his RPD uniform and changes in there rather than right in front of Marvin. In the same locker room, we find a key to that gate, so that's how Officer Kennedy enters the police station for his first day. When Leon makes it to the main room, Marvin is already dead in turn, so one of his first acts as an officer needs to be killing his lieutenant. He also sees a pretty concerning sight on one of the cameras, that being this giant blue man in a duster coat and hat wandering the halls. I'm sure that won't be a problem later. Anyway, gameplay-wise, Leon has the same objective as Claire. However, story-wise, Claire would probably be working on collecting those medals right now, so let's just say Leon is exploring the police station. As he's doing that, the blue man I mentioned in the last paragraph does indeed become a problem. Now, it feels weird to introduce him like this because he does have a much cooler introduction in the first run, but his name is Mr. X. He's one of those tyrants I mentioned earlier, although if you play the first game or watched my video, you'd see that he looks very different compared to the two other tyrants so far. Those being the proto-tyrant from RE0 and the tyrant from RE1. Those guys were both butt naked, had a giant exposed heart, and one of their hands had mutated into a claw-like thing. Mr. X here looks more or less like a giant human. So what changed? Well, the Tyrant project has improved a lot since those games, mainly in the area of intelligence. The proto-tyrant was too stupid to follow any orders, and the RE1 tyrant's first act on this earth was to kill his creator. Mr. X, or T-00, is one of a series of mass-produced tyrants that was deployed to this police station with a mission. That mission is to recover a sample of something called the G-Virus, as well as killing any survivors he encounters. He's very good at that latter part, as he will chase you to the ends of the earth to crush your skull. Already this shows a huge improvement, but how did they get around the exposed heart and claw hand? Well, that fancy jacket he's wearing is both protecting his heart and somehow keeping him from mutating any further. These tyrants were developed to be bioweapons sold to militaries, and the T-00 tyrants are definitely the most practical things Umbrella has developed so far. There's really only one problem with the X-Man, as he doesn't seem to be able to use weapons. All he can really do is chase you down and beat your ass. But imagine if you can give this guy a Glock or something. Definitely an area to be improved upon. Anyway, that was my review of Umbrella's latest bioweapon, but Leon has to dodge this fucker for a while until eventually he can also make his way down to the secret passage and into the area where Claire fought the mutated man. Now, Leon technically fights him here too, but we're going to ignore that as Leon makes his way towards the parking garage. Alright, let's go back to Claire for a while. Just as Chief Irons escapes with Sherry, Claire breaks out of her bonds. She needs to get a keycard to open the way, so let's get to it. In a nearby morgue, Claire can find a key that allows her access to Chief Irons' private elevator. The man was so lazy he needed his own elevator just to get from his office to the parking garage. Anyway, when we take the elevator up to the Chief's office, we find some very troubling information about the man. On the low end, we learn that Umbrella, but more specifically, Dr. William Birkin was bribing the fuck out of him, both for not looking into Umbrella as well as using his police to kill anybody who looked deep into their activities, including Umbrella employees. That might sound weird, but we'll learn more about that in a minute. On the other end, we learn that he's into taxidermy. Well, that's not too bad, except we find a note that he's obtained a 22-year-old, 5'3", 100-pound pig to be taxidermed. Alright, so we definitely can't leave him with Claire for long. The only problem is that his spare keycard is locked behind this gate. The electrical panel next to the gate is all fucked up, so Claire needs to find replacement parts for it. This journey will eventually take her to the roof, where she has to put out a fire started by that crashed helicopter. When she does, Mr. X lifts the whole helicopter out of his way and begins chasing Claire. In this timeline we're going with, he wouldn't have been able to follow Leon through the secret passage, so he decided to pursue Claire instead. So now Claire is getting chased by the Tyrant. Now technically she needs 2 electrical components to fix the door, but Leon will later also need 2, and there's only 2 in the entire game, so let's just say they each needed 1, for the sake of continuity. That 1 is inside the clock tower at the peak of the station, but on the way Claire can find the Star's office and find a note from her brother. It's a very weirdly worded note that Claire remarks doesn't sound at all like her brother. The note is hinting at events that will happen in a later game, Code of Veronica X. Anyway, at the clock tower, Claire has to commit some vandalism and drop the bell in order to get the part. With the component in hand, let's head back to the Chief's office. When Claire enters the room, a phone starts ringing. It's Chief Irons calling from an orphanage next to the police station. He orders Claire to bring a locket that Sherry had dropped from the room next to him, and they trade the necklace for the child. We don't get to do that just yet though, as we actually have to play as Sherry trying to escape from the orphanage. Now this orphanage is a pretty dark place. It was funded by Umbrella, and as you might imagine, the kids were used as experiments. They were constantly given strange shots and pills by doctors, and when they were adopted, they were actually taken away to be infected with the various viruses Umbrella created. Evil stuff, and it was all overlooked by Chief Irons. Anyway, Sherry first has to solve this puzzle, which honestly took me way too long. I mean, considering that it's a puzzle where you have to line up symbols on 4 children's blocks, it made me feel pretty damn stupid. Once she does that though, it should be a clear shot out the door, except the Chief has it locked. Sherry enters the room where we can see the body of the Chief's latest taxidermy project. What a creep. But when she goes to grab the key off the wall, Irons appears and snatches it. He seems like he's about to beat her or something when Sherry splashes him in the face with some sort of acid. Sherry only has a few seconds to run from the disfigured Chief, as we now have to hide from him inside of a playroom. We have to hide from him for quite a while until the pain of his melting face gets too bad to handle and he tries to wash it off, allowing Sherry to snatch the key from him. She has to bolt for the front door only to find that it's also been locked with the chain on the outside, so she's basically fucked. Just as the chief catches her, the monster Claire fought from before reappears and plants some kind of worm into his mouth. We don't get to see what happens next though, as we're sent back to play as Claire. With the keycard, she can escape the police station and make her way through town towards the orphanage. After killing quite a few dogs, Claire arrives at the orphanage and finds the door open, the chain having been clawed off by that monster. When she gets there, she finds the chief in his last moments before some kind of parasite burrows out of his stomach and kills him. Well deserved. Through a hatch in the ground that leads to the sewers, Claire finds Sherry, only for the two of them to get chased down by Mr. X. They barely make it to an elevator, but the tyrant catches up. It looks like it's over for a minute until the creature reappears, clawing Mr. X in half with ease. Sherry recognizes it as her dad, which is why it protected her from Irons and Mr. X. Dad seems to lose control though as he sprouts a second head. He attacks the elevator, sending it falling down deeper into the sewers. Now that scene is fucking awesome. Only one problem. Mr. X can't die here. He has much more to do in Leon's campaign, including things that we know happened after this moment in Claire's. So let's just pretend that this monster didn't kill Mr. X and just attacked the elevator to be a dick. Alright, let's go back to Leon. So by the time he arrives at the parking garage, Claire has already gone to the chief's office, having taken the key with her. So that area is unavailable to Leon. Leon finds the parking gate locked again. Before he can give it too much thought, he gets attacked by a T-Virus-infected dog, enemies called Cerberuses. It's not looking too good for Leon when he's suddenly saved by this woman, an FBI agent named Ada Wong. Now, despite saving his life, she basically tells Leon to fuck off and goes her own way. Well, Leon has to find his own keycard. Luckily, there's a second one around the neck of this journalist. This guy was investigating Chief Irons and Umbrella, so the chief locked him up. He's been stuck in a cell for the entirety of the whole zombie outbreak. The journalist offers him a deal. Let him out and they'll both use the keycard to escape. Leon denies him though, as he says he needs to consult with Chief Irons first. Leon's not trying to get fired on his first day. Their conversation is interrupted by sounds in the distance. The journalist recognizes them. The sounds turn out to be Mr. X, and he takes the decision out of Leon's hands when he reaches through a brick wall to crush the journalist's skull.
Just get me the fuck out of here!
Oh my god.
Ada reappears and says that the journalist, Ben, was an informant working with her against Umbrella. She continued to leave Leon in the dark and walks away again, telling him to find them a way out. Well, the way out is right there around Ben's neck, but unfortunately Leon needs to find an electrical component to unlock the cell door. On his search, he's going to get harassed by Mr. X in much the same way Claire was. So let's say that while Claire was escaping the parking garage, Mr. X was chasing Leon rather than getting killed by the monster. Now, like I said, technically he needs two. Let's just say he found his component in the basement in the generator room. When Leon returns to the cell with his component, he unlocks it and finds an interview Ben recorded, one where he confronts a woman named Annette about Umbrella's involvement with things like the orphanage and police department.
I just find it way too coincidental Umbrella's one of the benefactors.
You told me this interview was about the new scholarship Umbrella set up.
Come on, nobody cares about that. They want to know about the G-Virus and that big fucking sinkhole in the city, which, by the way, rumor has it goes straight to your underground lab. Now, are you going to talk to me, or are you going to...
This interview's over.
Bitch.
Unfortunately though, restoring power to one cell opens all of them, releasing a shitload of zombies into one hallway, with Mr. X storming down the other. So you have to pick your poison there, but once Leon escapes back into the parking garage, the X-Man bursts through the door and grabs Leon by the neck. Ada once again saves him when she hits X with a SWAT van and pins him against the wall. X still isn't phased, so Ada blows up the van with some explosives she planted on it, earning the two a very brief respite. With the keycard in hand, Ada and Leon can leave the police station, but before they do that, let's go back to Claire. So after the elevator clash, Claire was out for a bit, long enough for this woman in a lab coat to have taken her somewhere. Claire keeps trying to get her to tell us where she took Sherry, but all she says is...
Sherry, my daughter is not your concern.
She also tells us that the creature's name is William. William as in William Birkin? So let's get this straight. If this is Sherry's mom and that creature is Sherry's dad, who's also William Birkin, that means this is Annette Birkin and Sherry is her and William's kid. That's definitely not good, as the last time we saw William in RE0, he was just a normal guy. I mean, the fuck happened to him? Further into the sewers, we see where she took Sherry. Her mom trapped her in this garbage disposal room. Now, I don't know why she couldn't just lock her in a closet or something. But anyway, Annette tells Sherry she doesn't have time for her shit right now, as she needs to manage the whole mutated husband situation. But Sherry doesn't seem to be doing too good as she collapses. We need to find a way in there. As we do that, we actually learn a little more about what's happening here. So down in these sewers are these giant flesh monsters who are infected with the aforementioned G-virus, or Golgotha virus. The G-virus was William's life work. It was accidentally discovered after the researchers at Arclay infected Lisa Trevor with a parasite called NE-alpha. When someone's infected with it, their whole body goes through cancerous levels of growth, causing them to grow a shitload of new flesh, eyes, teeth, and bone. Now, I don't mean to gross you out here, but there is a type of tumor you can get called a teratoma that can grow hair, teeth, and eye tissue inside of them. The G-virus does that, but on a much greater scale. Now, the weirder thing about it is that these monsters are driven to reproduce by planting those parasites in anybody they can find. That's what happened to Chief Irons. Now, if someone is compatible with the G-virus, they become another one of these monsters. Otherwise, the parasite just burrows out of them like what happened with Irons. Very gross. Now, I don't know why Birkin was so proud of this virus. The thing is way less viable as a bioweapon unless you're trying to end the world. Like I said earlier, tyrants are very practical and easy to control. G-virus monsters are neither of those things. Alright, so Claire and Leon both do the sewer section and fight the same boss. However, I think that Leon's fight is canon, so we're going to keep Claire's section short here. She opens the door to the trash disposal room and finds Sherry within, and she really is not doing too good now. Even Nanette realizes that her daughter is dying, but she initially says that nothing can be done. Sherry was implanted with one of the G-virus parasites by William back at the orphanage. She's either going to turn or die soon. Claire refuses to accept that, which finally awakens Annette's motherly instincts. She tells Claire to bring Sherry to her lab at an underground umbrella facility called Nest. They can get there using a cable car. Claire brings Sherry to the tram and they get on their way. Claire gives the dying little girl her jacket as well as offering her the locket that the chief wanted so bad. Sherry refuses it as it was an unwanted gift from her mom, and shortly after she passes out. Claire and Sherry arrive at the Nest, and it's a big-ass research facility hidden under the city. Umbrella greased a shitload of pockets to make sure no one investigated this place. As to why they built under the city rather than in the mountains or in the desert like the US government likes to do, is because that didn't go too well for them last time. If there was some kind of outbreak at Nest, they could easily just shut off the tram and nothing would escape. Claire brings Sherry into the Nest and lays her in a security room. On a computer, she sees that there's a vaccine for the G-virus somewhere in the lab. She just needs to find it. Before she does that, let's go back to Leon and Ada escaping the police station. So, with the fiery wreck of Mr. X behind them, Leon passes Ada the recording the journalists have made as they head out into the street. Ada says that the recording isn't enough for the FBI just yet, so they need to keep looking. The two need to pass through this gun shop next to the station, the same one that makes all of the specialty weapons STARS uses. Inside, the owner of the shop, Kendo, ambushes Leon and holds him at gunpoint. In the background, Leon can see his daughter, very clearly infected with the T-virus and turning into a zombie. Ada appears and says they need to kill the girl before she turns. Of course, Kendo says fuck no, but he agrees to let the two go on their way as long as they leave him and his daughter alone. As Leon and Ada leave the shop, they hear a gunshot from Kendo's house.
It's one thing to keep the truth from me, but why him?
As they head towards the sewers, Ada fills Leon in on what's going on here. Everything I already told you. Umbrella secretly makes bioweapons for militaries around the world. The T-virus is the cause of all the zombies, and she says that Annette is the one who leaked the virus. In the sewers, she tells Leon about the Nest, but they are interrupted by a rumbling in the sewers. That rumbling turns out to be a big-ass T-virus crocodile that's lurking in the sewers. The croc immediately attacks Leon, and he has to flee through the shitwater until eventually he can get the animal's mouth stuck on a gas pipe. Shooting the pipe blows the croc's head off and kills the monster. If only that was the only thing lurking in these sewers. Leon and Ada continue through the sewers until they eventually find Annette Birkin. Time-wise, this would be as Claire is trying to get Sherry out of the garbage bin. When Ada confronts her, there's no, FBI, lay down your weapon, or you're under arrest. She goes straight to,
We're here for the G-virus.
this of course sets off Annette, who burns the body of a G-virus victim and sprays some bullets at Ada and Leon. Leon jumps in the way like the hero he is to save Ada, but takes a shot to the shoulder. Annette manages to escape while Ada patches up Leon, leaving her jacket behind. Now, I don't think Ada's outfit is up to the FBI's dress code, but I mean, she got that shit on. Anyway, we now get to play as Ada in a short section as she chases down Annette. Ada has this little hacking device she can use to get through the sewers, and she finally manages to find Annette, although the scientist is still out of reach. That's about when Mr. X reveals that he's still not dead, and in fact his jacket isn't even burnt. Ada manages to dodge the tyrant once again, which lands her in a room with a trash incinerator. Inside the incinerator is a bracelet that allows entry to the Nest, a visitor who is trapped inside. When Ada enters the incinerator, Annette comes up behind her and closes it, turning it on with the federal agent inside. Ada has to use her hacking device to open the door before she's burnt alive, but by the time she does, Annette is already gone. Ada once again has to chase her down, where she ends up confronting Mrs. Birkin. Annette once again says she'll never give up the G-virus. Now, if we didn't know about the whole Sherry and William thing, we would think she was just another greedy scientist trying to cover up her work. That is not the case, though, as Annette knows if the G-virus gets out, it could spell the end of the world. Anyway, Annette knocks Ada off a ledge into the same trash bin Sherry was locked in. Claire must have already rescued her. During the fall, Ada gets a sharp piece of metal lodged in her leg, so there's no way she can escape on her own. We then go back to playing as Leon as he wakes up and has to find out what happened to Ada. Leon goes through the same area Claire did, eventually seeing Ada trapped down in the dump. There's some kind of groaning/growling sound coming from outside the disposal room, so we better get down there fast. So now I'll talk a little more about the sewers. You need to find these chest-themed spark plugs. I don't know why everybody in Raccoon City has to be so creative all the time. That journey will take you to some dark places, mainly this area overgrown with flesh, G-Virus parasites, and the monsters themselves. Monsters are the best way to describe them since they aren't really human at all anymore. Just like William, the G-Virus has grown them a completely new head and a giant eye like William. In the same way, destroying the eye is the best way to kill them. The only thing is, these things are much weaker than Birkin himself. We see why that is on a videotape found on a dead Umbrella agent's body. All we see for now is that a team of agents had recovered a suitcase full of G and T virus samples, but they were attacked in the sewers by William, who then proceeded to dump the entire case of viruses on his face. That's why William continues to mutate and grow larger while these other G monsters seem to end up at a steady size eventually. This tape also shows us how the T-Virus spread throughout the city. Rats. It's always the fucking rats. These rats thought the T-Virus sample looked absolutely delectable and just had to take a nibble. They would then spread it to the other rats in the sewers who spread it to the water supply, and eventually the whole city is turned into zombies. Anyway, once Leon finds all the chest piece plugs, he can open the door to the compactor. But the power to the door is still off. Leon has to turn it back on. But when he does, William Birkin attacks once again, this time sticking his arm to the ceiling at you for a while until eventually deciding to actually attack. He chases Leon onto this platform where the boss fight commences. Now, similar to last time, you can't kill him with bullets. He's mutating and growing far too fast for that. What Leon has to do is use this shipping container on a crane to knock him off the platform and into the depths below. You have to do it twice while also not getting knocked off yourself, but on the second time, Birkin still tries to climb up the container only for the entire thing to fall off, sending the monster down a chasm once again. Leon can then rescue Ada from the compactor, take the shank out of her leg, and the two limp towards the cable car that will take them to the nest, using Ada's bracelet to get in. On the ride, Leon is pretty giddy to win some favor with the FBI, but Ada says that once they get the virus, she's going on her own. This kinda deflates Leon and he doesn't really want to do it anymore, but after Ada gives him a kiss, he's more energized than ever. So Ada will have to stay in the car while Leon fetches the virus, but before that, let's go back to Claire. So this lab section is most of the reason why I believe Claire first is canon, because we know she had to do her thing before Leon could do his. Anyway, the Nest is actually a pretty nice facility and actually paints Umbrella as a pretty good employer. I mean, they have a nap room for their employees, like, come on. Anyway, Claire gets one of those bracelets from Sherry, but it only has level 1 clearance. You need at least level 2 to do anything in this place. She can find her first upgrade on a corpse in the aforementioned nap room, which allows her to access to the east area of the lab. The vaccine is in the west area, but sometimes you have to go backwards before you can go forward. Now this east area was focused on enhancing a research project we saw the beginnings of in RE1. In RE1, there's a giant T-virus infected plant called Plant 42. Rather than photosynthesis, it ate humans for food. Well, what we see in the East Wing is Plant 43, and rather than eating humans, it turns them into plant zombies. This thing has grown out of control since the virus outbreak in the lab, and it's gotten its vines on most of the scientists that worked on it. These plant zombies are unkillable unless you have fire. Claire has to get a wristband upgrade from a corpse inside the plant's greenhouse, but the thing isn't willing to let go of the body. To get rid of the plant, we have to do a similar thing to what you can do in RE1 to kill Plant 42. In RE1, you can mix a bunch of random chemicals in a dusty closet to make a chemical called V-Jolt, then apply it to 42's roots. In this one, the process is much more formal. You have to first find the herbicide, then take it down to a cold lab and freeze it. The herbicide can then be dispensed over the entire greenhouse at once, shriveling up Plant 43 and causing it to drop the body. The plant zombies are still alive, so 43 isn't actually dead, but Claire can run in and grab the wristband. The band allows access to the West Wing, where we can find a videotape showing what initially happened to Mr. Birkin. It shows a squad of USS, Umbrella Security Service, ambushing Birkin and attempting to take him into custody. What they really want is the G-Virus, but they were also supposed to take Birkin in alive. Birkin pulls a gun on them though, so he was gunned down by the team. Alright, now let's talk about the falling out between Umbrella and Birkin. So back in RE0, we saw Wesker and Birkin talking about abandoning Umbrella after the T-Virus outbreak in the mountains. They saw the writing on the wall and knew that eventually the hammer was going to come down on Umbrella. Wesker went his own way, but Birkin needed to stick with Umbrella long enough to finish the G-Virus, his life work and legacy. Now, some of the events I'm going to talk about next are from the original RE3 and were cut out from the remake, but just go with it. So Birkin, knowing Umbrella was all but finished, secretly made a deal with the US government. Once the G-Virus was complete, he would sell it to them right out from under Umbrella and be given asylum for his family in exchange. Birkin began clearing out the ranks of Nest employees of anybody who opposed him or spied for Umbrella. That's why he had the police killing everyone who investigated Nest, including Umbrella employees. He stopped responding to Umbrella HQ's messages, and once the virus was complete, he notified the government, who sent a squad of Delta Force members to recover it. Umbrella caught word of this from spies in the military, so they immediately dispatched their own squad to get it first. This was called Operation Nest Wrecker, which is an absolutely sick name. Anyway, Delta Force went the wrong fucking way on the tram and ended up at an Umbrella waste disposal plant where the company ambushed them with 5 T-00 Tyrants, or Mr. X's. Delta Force managed to kill all 5 of them, but they all died in the process. I mean, considering that Leon, Ada, and Claire haven't even been able to kill one of them, that's pretty impressive. Anyway, Operation Nest Wrecker was a shit show. They infiltrated Nest through the sewers to ambush Birkin, where they of course killed him, except Birkin was able to inject himself with the G-Virus, which brought him back as a monster who then chased them into the sewers and killed the entire team except one. Alright, enough exposition. Claire arrives at the vaccine sample and unlocks its canister using the locket Sherry gave her, the one she got from Annette. As she's trying to return to Sherry, an even more mutated form of William breaks through the roof for another fight. Annette appears and hits him with some kind of liquid, I would guess some kind of antiviral agent, and he goes down. We see in a cutscene that she had a chance to kill William before he mutated, but she couldn't pull the trigger back then. Well, William is far from dead as he throws Annette against the wall and mutates even further, growing more limbs. Annette hits him with a second antiviral, but he barely flinches at it. That's when Claire decides once again to be a hero as she hands Annette the vaccine to use on Cherry before hopping down a descending platform to fight William. It's quite a fucking fight indeed, as William will tear entire pieces of the wall off to throw them at you, but after exhausting pretty much every resource at her disposal, William goes down once again. Claire then rushes back to Sherry where she finds that Annette had administered the vaccine. Now I'll warn you up front, the timeline gets a little fucky here, but Annette confirms that Sherry is virus-free, but she's too weak to get up to escape with them. Claire is considering dragging her out until suddenly the intercom warns of an unauthorized removal of the G-Virus and that the facility is about to self-destruct to prevent it. Annette hands Claire a level 4 wristband upgrade, and Sherry and Clary have to leave Annette as she dies on the floor. But let's just say she passed out on the floor, you'll see why. Claire and Sherry then run to the main elevator, which takes them down to an area where they have to run past a shitload of enemies, and at one point I just lost track of Sherry, but she was fine, so whatever.
Sherry, you hanging in there? Atta girl! Think we're almost out of here!
The two find a train car that can take them away from this place, and just as Claire powers it up, why don't we see who removed that virus sample? Now gameplay-wise, Leon has to do all the same things Claire did, like killing Plant 43, but let's just say that she already did all that. So Leon arrives at the nest and makes his way to the East Wing to find his own bracelet upgrade, but when he gets there he sees another level 3 band upgrade in the room. As he grabs it, none other than the X-Man himself returns, punching his way through the glass to beat Leon's ass some more. Leon manages to outrun the Tyrant and get to the West Wing where he finds the virus container already open. This moment is why I put Claire first, because Leon even remarks,
Huh. That was easy.
Anyway, he grabs the G-Virus sample, triggering the nest's automated self-destruct sequence due to an unauthorized removal. Now on his way out, he has basically the same encounter with mutated William and Annette, the only difference being that rather than volunteering to fight William, Annette kinda makes him.
What are you doing?
We can't let him get away!
Kinda funny, but we'll have to ignore that he fought William. Again, let me say, this is super fucky, but somehow Annette would make her way over here to investigate who removes the virus. When she did, she found Leon and begged him to destroy the G-sample. She tells Leon that Ada is no FBI agent, rather she's a mercenary sent to steal the G-Virus and sell it. Annette then passes out again and Leon makes his way to the elevator shaft where he finds Ada. Leon confronts Ada about what Annette said and she pulls a gun on him, so clearly she's not an FBI agent. Obviously. Leon really tests how much that kiss meant to Ada here, but she's not willing to shoot Leon. He doesn't have to worry about it for long though, because Annette rises from the dead once again to shoot Ada. The platform beneath them collapses, sending the G-sample falling into the chasm below and leaving Ada hanging off a ledge. Leon tries his best to save her, but eventually he loses his grip as Ada falls down with the virus. Leon has to push through the grief though as he takes the main elevator down as well. He ends up in the security room where he sees none other than Claire on a camera. Claire says that she found a way out, but the signal cuts out before she can say where. After Claire loses Leon's signal, she manages to power up the rail car and it begins to descend. As it does, guess who makes another appearance? It's Birkin, and he's even more monstrous than before. More eyes, more teeth, and more flesh. But luckily the rail car came with a minigun situations just like this. Now at this point Birkin is so mutated that he literally regrows eyes as fast as he can shoot them, but with enough bullets the mutant can be put down once again, where it seems like it might be for good. The rail car is finally placed on track so the path to escape is clear for Claire and Sherry. For Leon though, he has to run through a similarly enemy-filled nightmare, but before he can reach the railcar, X comes back to harass Leon, even if it means both of their deaths. Leon manages to shake him one more time when an explosion rocks the Tyrant, and he reaches a lift that will take him down to the train. Nothing can ever be easy in this place though, as Leon sees his stalker is still alive. The explosion burnt off his coat, allowing the Tyrant to reach his final form. He's more like the previous Tyrants now, exposed heart, claw arm, and much, much faster. Leon throws everything he has at X, but it's still not enough. Leon's saving grace comes in the form of a mysterious rocket launcher that slides down onto the platform. Is it a gift from God, or did Ada somehow survive? It's the latter, obviously, but Leon doesn't know that. Just like the first game, there's one thing a tyrant can't handle, and that's a missile to the face.
Me bamba!
The rocket blows Mr. X's upper half off and finally kills the thing. Leon barely manages to reach the currently leaving train with Claire and Cherry. Once he does, all three are reunited and can escape the place in peace. Nope, guess who's still alive? It's Birkin, and he's once again got more flesh, teeth, and eyes. Leon offers to go back to fight the monster while Claire stays to protect Cherry in case he fails. Birkin at this point isn't even vaguely human, he's just a squirming mound of flesh trying to get Leon. Shooting Birkin might as well be pissing in the wind, as he's not even fazed by even the mighty rocket launcher. In a last-ditch effort, Claire detaches the train car with Birkin on it, sending the monster back into the flames of the rapidly exploding facility. Leon, Claire, and Cherry finally manage to escape the nightmare, only to be greeted with the friendliest trucker you'd ever meet. That's the end of the game, however there's one side mode I should mention, the fourth survivor. So there's this USS agent named Hunk, a guy who earned the name Grim Reaper for how successful he was. Hunk led the Alpha team, the very ones who gunned down Birkin only to be killed by him in the sewers. While Hunk survived and managed to escape Raccoon City with a sample of the G-Virus to be used in later experiments. Well, that was RE2. Now sorry if the timeline got a little too weird to handle at the end there, but I did my best, alright? Now when it comes to RE3 Remake, it's pretty much nothing like 2. Like, I would describe it more like a Call of Duty campaign, you know, kind of like an action movie, you know? I still enjoy quite a bit though, so let's get straight into it. RE3 begins with a very ominous cutscene, one that talks about the unrest happening in Raccoon City, as well as showing Umbrella scientists working on something big. We see them loading a large capsule labeled Nemesis onto a helicopter before we get to Jill Valentine, our main character. Jill was one of the main heroes in RE1, and she wakes from her sleep only to look in the mirror and find herself rotting away and becoming a zombie. Of course she's still dreaming, and she wakes up for real with her face still intact. The game starts out on September 28th, one day before the events of RE2. There's a couple pretty interesting notes in Jill's apartment that let us know a lot. First is that she was suspended from STARS following the Arklay Mountains incident. Everybody in STARS thinks it's complete bullshit, but of course we know that their boss, Chief Irons, is paid by Umbrella. Another note talks about possible reasons why neither Jill or Chris were infected by the T-Virus despite getting chewed on a lot throughout the first game. This is definitely an interesting question, as we have to wonder the same about Leon and Claire. The note speculates that they might be resistant to the virus, which at first I thought was stupid. Like, isn't it convenient that the two main characters of the game just happen to be resistant to the virus? Then I started thinking about it a little bit. Probably 95% of the STARS agents that were sent to the Arklay Mountains died and became zombies. So it's not that Chris and Jill are immune because they're the main characters, it's that they're the main characters because they're immune. Does that make sense? What I'm saying is, if Chris and Jill hadn't been immune, but two other STARS members had been, they would have been the ones to be the heroes, and Chris and Jill would have ended up dead like the others. The same with Leon and Claire. That's what I'm going with anyway. The other thing to note is that Jill was about to leave town to go investigate Umbrella on her own. Now, if only she would have left a little earlier. Anyway, Jill gets a call. It's Brad, the STARS helicopter pilot from the first game. He frantically tells Jill she needs to get out of there, but she doesn't get the chance.
I don't have time to explain. You gotta get out of there right now!
Alright, let me grab my...
The wall bursts open to reveal this giant monster, and I'm not going to be coy or anything. It's the fucking Nemesis. He immediately starts beating Jill's ass, and not even a gunshot to the eye deters him. Jill barely manages to escape the apartment. I don't know why she thought she could hold the door shut against Nemesis. She's about to reach an exit when Nemesis cuts off her escape route again, forcing Jill to cut into a nearby apartment. She climbs out a window to see the town around her rapidly going to shit. The zombie outbreak is spreading extremely fast, as it usually does in these situations. She climbs down to the next floor only for Nemesis to bust through the ceiling, revealing that he has these tentacles he can use to get more reach. Jill manages to escape again for about 5 seconds until the monster catches up once again, this time using a piece of the ceiling to try to kill her. Well, as it turns out, taking pieces of the ceiling out isn't a good idea, as Jill barely manages to escape before the building collapses in on the Nemesis. Jill emerges onto the street where she finds Brad. He lets us know that Nemesis is hunting down the last two members of STARS in town, those being Jill and Brad. The two briefly float the idea of leaving town until a horde of zombies appears and chases them into a diner. Brad takes a bite from one of them. Unlike Jill, he doesn't know if he's resistant or not. He pushes Jill to escape while he holds the door. What a hero. Jill continues onwards, eventually coming across another human who decides to barricade himself inside of a shipping container. Hopefully that works out for him.
I'm not going out there!
The parking garage isn't far. I can
The only safe place is in here!
A helicopter flying above tells Jill to get to the top of a nearby parking garage so that they can pick her up. So that's where we're headed. When she reaches the parking garage, the helicopter lands to pick her up, and it seems like we might be finally out of this mess. Nope, guess who's back? Nemesis unburied himself from the rubble and takes down the helicopter. Just like Ada, Jill thinks it's a good idea to try to ram him with the car, and it goes just about as well, except this time Jill is left with future spine and neck damage. After crashing the car and monster off the building, the thing is unfazed and walks right through the burning wreckage, burning off that mask he had on. Honestly, I wish they had kept that look for longer, but before he can kill Jill, he's distracted by a rocket headed his way. Nemesis catches the rocket and discards it, but it seems like he used all his aura on that as he gets hit head-on with the next rocket. Now, do you remember when Leon did this exact thing with Mr. X and it completely destroyed the Tyrant? Well, Nemesis is pretty much undamaged. He just has to take a knee for a minute to catch his breath. The man who saved us is Carlos, a UBCS, or Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service agent. Jill, who knows Umbrella is behind this, is pretty frustrated that the only soldiers around are Umbrellas, but Carlos takes us to the subway where they're gathering civilians to leave the city. Jill gets to meet the UBCS captain, Mikhail Victor, who recognizes her as a STARS agent. He asks us to help them get the train started as he's lost the vast majority of his soldiers, and Jill agrees to help save the civilians. Alright, so finally the intro is over, so let's talk some more about what that monster that just hounded us is. So you probably don't remember this, but I mentioned earlier a parasite called NE Alpha. Well, while Umbrella USA was creating their tyrants and G-viruses, Umbrella Europe was looking into using parasites. They genetically engineered one based on a Spanish myth of a parasite called Las Plagas, something that definitely won't come up in RE4. Well, one of the main issues with tyrants is their intelligence. They're a little smarter than T-virus zombies, but clearly not smart enough to even use a weapon. It seems like Umbrella USA just kind of accepted this as they moved into large-scale production of the tyrants, but Umbrella Europe thought of a better way to do it. They created the NE Alpha parasite to essentially replace the brain of a tyrant. The parasite does just that as it replaces the entire nervous system of the creature. That's what Nemesis is. It's essentially a proof of concept. Now the kind of funny thing is why it's here. Nemesis is here hunting down STARS members. Well, there's only like 5 of those left, so why bother? The answer is that Umbrella Europe wanted to give one big fuck you to Umbrella USA by showing that their BOW could kill the STARS agents that the USA's couldn't. Now we can see very clearly how much of an improvement over Mr. X that Nemesis is. First of all, he's way faster. I mean, Mr. X's max speed was a leisurely stroll. He's also bigger and much tougher as we see through the rocket launcher. Also compare their missions. Mr. X was sent to kill any survivors he found in the police station, hopefully recovering the G-virus in the process. Nemesis was sent after 2 very specific people, those being Brad and Jill. So yeah, Nemesis being here is really just to show Umbrella USA how much better their European counterparts are. Let's continue with the story. Like I said, Jill's objective is to restore power to the subway so she, the UBCS agents, and all the civilians can escape the city. But to do that, she has to venture into the rapidly deteriorating city. Along the way, we find a dying UBCS agent having been bitten by a zombie. Jill wants to try to save him, but she doesn't have to worry about it for long as this gray-haired fuck appears and kills the man. His name is Nikolai and he's a real dick. He basically calls Jill soft and says that she should go back to the train before she dies or gets someone else killed. Well, Jill's first destination is, as you might expect, a power station. When she arrives, she finds the power grid covered in some kind of insect hive, and has to manually restart it by flipping a couple switches inside of the hive. As Jill heads toward the hive, she finds the source of the goo. It's a giant insect. They look kind of similar to the plague crawlers of RE0, those just being giant roaches. These ones are a little more advanced, and we see that their method of attack is this. You have to take a green herb to throw up the maggots, and I have to say that Jill is much stronger than me. If an insect violated me like this, I think I'd probably just have to kill myself. Like, there's no way I'd be able to continue after that, let alone face more of the insects. The craziest thing here is that these aren't exactly a new thing. These insects have been killing workers for a while down here, but it seems like with the virus spreading, enough of the workers finally left so that the insects could take over completely. Anyway, going further into the hive is exactly what Jill has to do as she makes her way into the hive to flip those switches. The insects in here are basically endless, but once all the switches are flipped, Jill can return to the power station and switch it back on. Turning on the power fries the entire hive, making sure that no one will be violated like that ever again. The next step is to head to the subway station to plot out a route, and then get on their merry way. Jill heads back to the subway to meet with Carlos where she sees Nikolai once again. He calls Jill dead weight before heading for the train himself. Just as he leaves, guess who reappears? Nemesis is back. Jill knows that he's after her, so she makes Carlos stay while she distracts the monster. What distracting him really boils down to, though, is running, and you have to run through a vent into the sewers. Nemesis is too big through the vent, so we're good for a while at least. For some reason down here they decided that rather than using a key, they would use a battery pack to power doors. Seems unnecessarily complicated and expensive to me, but whatever. Not far into the sewers, we get ambushed by one of these giant salamander-looking things. Now, if you remember in RE1, there are enemies called hunters, human-lizard hybrids made possible via the T-virus. Well, technically those were hunter alphas, and they were made by grafting reptile DNA to a human embryo. These are hunter gammas, made by doing the opposite, human DNA onto a lizard embryo. We can see how big of a difference that made. These things are much bigger, slower, and they look more amphibious than reptilian. The real question is though, why are they in the sewers? Well, they were developed as a BOW just like the hunter alphas, however the project was cancelled for a few good reasons. One is that where the fuck would you actually use one of these things on a battlefield? These have to be maybe the least practical thing Umbrella has ever developed. Second is that they have a glaring vulnerability to fire. Joe can find a grenade launcher down here that one-shots them with fire grenades. If you're wondering why there was a grenade launcher in the sewers, it was for the express purpose of killing these things if they got out of line. Anyway, Umbrella ordered for them to be disposed of, but the scientists that created them had fallen in love with his creations, so he took them into the sewers to raise them and eventually prove their worth to Umbrella. So these things have been chilling in the sewers for a while, eating the occasional sewer worker until Jill arrives and kills almost all of them. Eventually she finds her way out using that dumb battery pack key, but as she's climbing up the ladder, it's Nemesis, and his ass has a flamethrower. Clearly he can use weapons, which again makes him a vast improvement over Mr. X. In comparison to the Hunter Gammas, I would say Nemesis is probably the most practical BOW Umbrella has ever made. Jill has to flee to avoid getting burnt, but the only path forward is climbing up an under-construction skyscraper. Of course this means Nemesis can easily set the building on fire, so we have to continue climbing as the monster chases us. Eventually though, she reaches the top of the building and it's time for a boss fight. The first order of business needs to be destroying that flamethrower, which you can do by blowing up the tank on his back. Nemesis is unfazed by being on fire, and he starts using the flamethrower as a club. Finally though, the monster goes down and the building explodes with fire, sending Jill tumbling down below. It seems that Nemesis is finally dead as Jill radios Carlos to tell him the good news. Jill ended up falling in the alleyway between the police station and orphanage, allowing her to head into Kendo's gun shop. Remember that this is before Leon and Ada were there. Jill invites Kendo to come with to the subway, but all he says is he has other arrangements. Those arrangements being, of course, his T-virus infected daughter. Jill has to move on where she encounters a very strange looking enemy. It's a zombie with some kind of insect on its head. You have to destroy the insect to destroy the zombie. And these bugs are actually the NE alpha parasites, and Nemesis is running around creating these parasite zombies. Anyway, as Jill walks back onto the street, oh fuck, he's not dead. And this time he has a rocket launcher. This scene where the container opens is maybe the hardest cutscene I've ever seen. I swear, when they decided to remake RE3, their whole goal was just to make Nemesis as cool as possible. Anyway, Jill has to run once again, dodging missiles until a car flips and blocks the monster from chasing any further. She radios Carlos to let him know she once again failed to kill Nemesis, but it turns out he can jump over cars as he reappears to shoot more missiles. This culminates with him using his rockets to knock this giant head off a building and send it rolling towards Jill. Eventually though, Jill manages to reach the subway, where Carlos is waiting with some kind of master plan to take down the Nemesis. That plan seems to be one single claymore mine, which definitely does surprise him, but not much else than that. His plan culminates with him blowing up an oil tanker on the beast and dropping him outside of the station. Jill and Carlos continue to the train, where Carlos informs her that he won't be catching it. He has another mission. That mission is to recover an Umbrella scientist, Nathaniel Bard, who had created a vaccine to the T-virus. He's currently at RPD station. On the train, it turns out that Jill has to ride in a car with Nikolai and Mikhail, an absolute nightmare blunt rotation. Jill's trying to keep to herself when Mikhail confronts Nikolai about a mysterious platoon disappearing and being ambushed by zombies. The tension gets released when Nemesis reappears, unfazed by Carlos's explosions. Nemesis already blew up the car with all the civilians, so that's great, but Mikhail tells Jill to stay behind while he distracts them. That doesn't work out too well when Nikolai betrays Jill, locking her in a car with Nemesis. Mikhail's last act on this earth is to blow himself up and Nemesis with C4, derailing the train in the process. We don't get to see the aftermath of the crash as it's time to play as Carlos. He's headed for RPD with his fellow agent Tyrell. And they're going the same way Leon did. When they arrive at the front door, we see exactly how Marvin got injured.
Come on, man. Not you too. Sorry.
After being bit, Brad turned into a zombie and made his way to the station, probably because those were some of the last memories he had. Marvin couldn't bring himself to kill the old STARS member, so he got bit. Now Brad is actually tough as shit as a zombie, but Carlos can take him down. When the two Umbrella agents make their way inside, Marvin is gone. Their goal is the STARS office, where Bard is supposed to be. They make their way there, blowing up a wall in the process so that Leon and Claire can later deal with the consequences. When they arrive at the STARS office, Carlos joins a Zoom call with Dr. Bard. He's holding up at a hospital in town and he begs Carlos to send STARS to save him. The call cuts out quickly though, and Tyrell informs us what the plan really is. Umbrella wants to wipe all evidence of their involvement in this whole T-virus shit, which includes destroying the vaccine they made for it. I mean, if you didn't create the zombie virus, why would you then have a vaccine for it? Carlos objects to the plan of arresting Bard, but he decides to just go with it for now. That's about when he gets a radio call from Jill, informing him that the train derailed and Nikolai is a traitor. Call cuts off though, so Carlos decides to run off and find Jill, while Tyrell stays to find Bard. We then go back to Jill and find her climbing out of the wreckage. It seems everyone is dead. She climbs her way out of the subway and sees Nemesis come stumbling after her. Seems he finally does take issue with being on fire as he scrambles to run into water. I think one downside to adding intelligence to these things is that they're smart enough to try to save themselves. I can't imagine Mr. X caring whether or not he's gonna burn to death. Anyway, Nemesis is finally dead, so Joe can radio Carlos to tell him about the crash. Her call with Carlos is interrupted by something in the water, and guess what? The motherfucker's still not dead, and this time he looks much different. It seems that Nemesis' outfit worked a lot like X's in the sense it stopped him from mutating out of control. With the outfit burned off, he looks like a giant dog or xenomorph or something. He looks pretty fucking cool. He manages to get Jill in this town square where another boss fight happens. Nemesis will hound your ass until you do enough damage to give it the zoomies. You then have to hit him with a mine as he's running around to knock him off and expose the parasite in his neck. The parasite can take a lot more shots than you would think as the boss fight goes on for a while, but eventually with a final grenade she puts the monster down. Nemesis was just faking though, as the second Jill turns her back, he's up and attacking again. Jill knocks a massive gate down on top of Nem's arm, severing it at the shoulder, and finally killing the beast. Nope, he immediately gets back up and grows a new appendage, although it's just a tentacle this time instead of an actual arm. He sticks Jill with some kind of needle, causing her to fall to the ground, frothing at the mouth. Nemesis also goes down, but we know that won't be for long. As Jill convulses on the ground, Nikolai steps out and thanks Jill for doing some kind of service for him.
You've done me a big favor. Yes.
We then come back to Carlos about a day later. He's finally found Jill, but she's unresponsive. Nemesis is notably missing. He decides the best bet is to take her to the hospital where Bard was to see if they can find that vaccine. So Carlos lays Jill on a bed in the hospital while he searches the place for Bard. As you would expect, the hospital is overrun by zombies. They had been flooded with patients in the weeks prior to this. Well, the door to Bard's office has a voice lock on it, so Carlos needs to find some kind of sample of Bard's voice.
Open the door.
No voice match found.
Voice match? What kind of sci-fi bullshit is this?
That journey will take him to the ruined hospital until eventually we get ambushed by a familiar-looking enemy. Kind of familiar. These are Hunter Betas, what they ended up going with instead of the flabby Gammas. They're much bigger than the original Hunters, and that comes with a big increase in toughness. Hunter Alphas could really only take a few shots. These guys, however, are pretty much only weak to explosives. The biggest difference between them and Alphas is their face. It looks like some sort of crustacean DNA was introduced to make their skin tougher. These Hunter Betas are fucking menaces, and they can easily one-shot you at any health. These things were deployed to the hospital as a final field test before Umbrella decided whether to mass-produce them or not. This also allowed them to kill any survivors who might know about the vaccine research happening here. Anyway, Carlos is very ill-equipped to deal with the Hunters, as their main weakness is explosives, and he barely has any of those. But once you get past two of them at once, you can pick up a voice recording of Bard and take it back to the door. The recording paints him as a real asshole as he berates a nurse.
Documents we're doing in your office in the first place.
Who do you think you're talking to? I'm goddamn Nathaniel Bard. I'm the best biologist you'll ever meet, you bedpan-changing waste of a nursing degree. Of course I have connections higher up. Of course the military consults with me on projects beyond your...
The recording works though and opens the door, showing us the Bard is long dead from a gunshot to the head. There's still hope he stashed the vaccine somewhere, so Carlos heads over to a computer. We can read an email on the computer of Bard warning a senator about the potential T-virus outbreak and trying to get assurance that he would be protected if that does happen. The final thing we find is a recording of Bard admitting that Umbrella caused all of this in one last bid to regain any sense of honor he had. He also says that he has more of the vaccine stored in an underground facility. Anyway, Carlos can find one dose of the vaccine in Bard's office and take it back to Jill. It's not an instant thing, as Carlos has to sit around for a while until Tyrell busts in, injured from the trek over. Tyrell switches on a TV, revealing an emergency alert from the government. They warn that a nuclear bomb is going to be dropped on the city on October 1st. They tell all uninfected citizens to evacuate as the bomb will destroy all organic material in the city. Carlos and Tyrell don't get much time to mull that over when a horde of zombies descends on the hospital. Carlos has to go out and fight them while Tyrell tries to lower the shutters to prevent more from coming in. It's quite a fight, but Carlos can eventually blow up a pillar, causing it to collapse on the entrance and prevent any more zombies from getting in. With the zombies gone, Carlos decides to head out into the city and try to find anyone who can stop the bomb from dropping. Tyrell agrees to try to contact anyone from in here. They think that if the government knows there's a vaccine for the virus, that they won't destroy the city. It's then Jill time, and she wakes up from a fever dream to find that it's now October 1st, and the bomb will be dropped in just a few hours. That's not good. She exits the room and finds Tyrell, who lets her know that Carlos had gone into a facility underneath the hospital to find the supposed vaccine stockpile. He also says that the government has agreed to stop the launch if they're brought a sample of the vaccine. Jill heads down there too and finds a sprawling complex under the hospital. Umbrella loves their underground facilities. She enters a shipping room and sees Nikolai overlooking the room. When she tries to get to an elevator to face him, the power blows out and she has to restore it. This area introduces us to a new type of enemy, Paleheads. A strange mutation has made these zombies all but indestructible. Not in the same way as tyrants though, rather they just regenerate too fast to actually meaningfully damage them. The only way to do is with high caliber weapons like the Magnum, simply because they cause too much damage too quickly. Anyway, Jill has to find and steal 3 fuses from various power boxes, the whole time dodging the monsters held within the shipping containers. When she does, she can power up the elevator and head to the overlook where Nikolai was. Of course he's gone by now, but we can see on his computer various reports about the fights between zombies and UBCS agents, as well as Jill's various encounters with Nemesis. This seems to be his purpose here, collecting combat data on the BOWs. Anyway, Tyrell finally catches up with us and agrees to back Jill up as they head down into the facility, creatively named Nest 2. Before they get far, guess who's back? It's Nemesis, and he impales Tyrell before barely getting blocked out of a room with Jill. Jill has to continue alone through the Palehead-infested facility. What exactly were they doing down here in Nest 2? Well, kind of the opposite of Nest 1. Down here they were developing countermeasures to use against BOWs in case of an outbreak. This is likely why the Paleheads developed, as they were testing various weapons and vaccines on zombies, which caused the virus to mutate and make the zombies stronger. We can also find a shitload of vacuum-wrapped tyrants here for the same reason, weapon testing on them. It's really pretty cool. Unfortunately though, that stockpile of vaccines Bard mentioned turns out to be a machine that can make the vaccine instead. So Jill has to find the 2 components to make a single vial of the stuff. Pretty misleading there, Bard. Speaking of Nathaniel, we can find a note here that indicates Umbrella USA knew about the Nemesis project and disapproved. They object to the use of a parasite because of how much more complex they are than viruses. Viruses are really more or less just a ball of DNA. They're so simple that they don't even fit science's requirements to be alive. The main reason for that being the viruses can't reproduce on their own, they need to hijack a host cells to do that, they don't grow, and they also don't control their internal environment. Viruses are one of the most simple things on the planet. Their DNA can be easily changed. For Umbrella, this means BOWs made with viruses can be easily controlled. Parasites, on the other hand, especially any alpha, which would be considered an animal, are magnitudes more complex than viruses. Umbrella USA is concerned with using parasites so there's no way you can truly know if you control a parasite, making them dangerous to use as weapons. So despite how big of an improvement Nemesis is over the Tyrants, we see that there are some very valid concerns about this thing. I think these concerns are validated by the fact that Nemesis has already become a giant dog monster and lost a lot of its utility on the battlefield. Anyway, once Jill makes the vaccine, guess whose tentacle comes creeping down the wall? Jill has to try to escape the Nemesis once again, but despite how far she runs, the beast always catches up. Nemesis ends up falling into some kind of BOW disposal pit. This would be great news except for the fact that Jill is hanging on by a thread above the very same pit. Nikolai appears once again and snatches the vaccine that Jill dropped. He tries to make a deal with Jill. He's going to make her go down there and fight Nemesis so that he can collect the combat data, and if she survives, he'll hand over the vaccine. Of course, it's not much of a choice, as Nikolai forces Jill to go down and fight the beast. It's much like the last fight with Dog Nemesis, except this time Carlos is there to help out. When Nem gets the zoomies, Carlos tells us where he is. We can shoot these little targets to activate a shock to knock him down. Eventually, Carlos even starts using a crane to hit these tanks of acid surrounding the arena to try to melt the Nemesis. As per usual, Jill's weapons barely scratch the monster, and the only way we can get him to stay down is when Carlos breaks his jaw with the crane. Jill can then climb onto the crane and get out of the arena as Carlos activates the acid pumps. The entire arena fills with acid, melting Nemesis down into a red paste as the monster is, once and for all, killed. When she's out of the acid pit, Jill runs after Nikolai to recover the vaccine, but when she catches him, he makes this weird offer.
Done. Give me the vaccine, you greedy son of a bitch.
No. You print money. I like money. We shall make ours an ongoing arrangement. Now drop the gun!
Their conversation gets cut short when... oh fuck, he's still not dead. But this time Nemesis has blossomed and become a beautiful, fleshy flower. This is really what Umbrella USA meant when they said you can't control a parasite. At this point, Nemesis is a threat to the entire world, just like using the G-Virus in any kind of warfare context. Anyway, Jill orders Carlos to go after Nikolai while she fights her stalker one last time. It's time to use Umbrella's greatest BOW killer, a room-sized railgun called Finger. Their notes say the thing can obliterate tyrants in one shot, but I mean, rocket launchers could do that too, so... Anyway, it does not kill Nemesis in one shot, although it probably would have had he not been in this insane stage of mutation. After the first shot, a few of the power capsules get stuck, so you have to manually move them back into the position. To stun Nemesis, you have to shoot these little pimples he develops until he gets stunned. After a second Finger shot, Nemesis is looking pretty bad, but it's not until Jill does this.
Come on! Next time, take the fucking hit!
The Nemesis finally gets destroyed, as well as what looks to be half the buildings that were behind him.
Good.
Jill doesn't have time to celebrate her victory as Nikolai is rapidly escaping with the only known vaccine to the T-Virus. She chases him to the roof where we can find Carlos after getting his ass beat. Nikolai ambushes Jill and takes her down. In one last fuck you from the Russian, he shoots the vaccine canister right as Jill is about to grab it. He says that his client ordered him to destroy Umbrella, which would be why he's been killing all these UBCS agents. We hear over an intercom that the nuke has been launched and will be hitting in 10 minutes. Before Nikolai can leave though, Carlos wakes up and attacks him. A fight ensues and Carlos manages to give Jill a shot at Nikolai. Now I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter where you shoot him, because it always just goes in the shoulder, but Jill shoots him in the shoulder. Jill and Carlos leave the trader as they get in the helicopter, barely escaping the explosion in time. Raccoon City is a crater behind them, but Jill and Carlos have escaped the nightmare and live to fight another day. So that was Resident Evil 2 and 3. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. So, you know, I gotta say, I feel like Mr. X in the 2 remake is actually kind of a better Nemesis than Nemesis is in 3. Like, you spend so much more time dodging X than Nemesis.